Be me, Henry. 21 years old, mechanical engineering major, currently surviving on generic energy drinks, the ones that taste like battery acid and fake citrus, and pure, unadulterated academic panic. My diet consists mostly of whatever leftovers my roommates abandon in the fridge. I have a violently average GPA, an incredibly average build, and a life trajectory that points straight toward middle management mediocrity. I am the kind of guy who physically blends into the cinder block walls of a lecture hall. I don't raise my hand. I don't sit in the front. I just exist in the background noise of the university, which is exactly why I never thought someone like Marie would ever perceive my existence, let alone orchestrate the absolute psychological horror show I am currently living in. Marie was the engineering department's golden child. If you looked up the word innocent in a dictionary, there would be a glossy photo of her clutching a color-coded binder. She was maybe 5'2" on a good day, big doe-like brown eyes, soft brown hair that always smelled like expensive shampoo. She kept it pinned back with these little pearl hair clips. She exclusively wore pastel cardigans, floral skirts that went past her knees, and tiny Mary Jane shoes that didn't make a sound when she walked. She never spoke above a soft, breathy whisper. In a major entirely dominated by loud, obnoxious dudes wearing unwashed hoodie, she was this delicate little porcelain doll, sitting dead center in the front row, meticulously taking notes with a multicolored pen. She didn't just have a perfect grade point average. She single-handedly ruined the curve for the rest of us, but nobody could ever be mad at her, because if you asked her for help, she would blush furiously, look down at her tiny shoes, and hand you a perfectly organized flashcard set. She was hyper-feminine, incredibly shy, and completely untouchable. Our paths collided in advanced thermodynamics. Our professor was a sadistic, bitter old man. He seemed to thrive on our collective suffering. He assigned us a massive semester-long partner project, worth 60% of our final grade. He told us the pairings were completely random, drawn from a hat in his office. When he stood at the podium and called my name, followed immediately by Marie's name, I felt the collective glare of 30 other guys burning a hole in the back of my neck. I had hit the academic lottery, but I also felt a deep sinking pit of absolute dread in my stomach. I was dead weight. I barely understood the reading from week 1, and I was going to drag this poor, brilliant girl down with me. After class, I nervously approached her desk. She was carefully packing her pastel highlighters into a little floral pencil case. I rubbed the back of my neck, feeling like a giant, clumsy idiot. "Hey," I said, "looks like we're partners." She jumped a little bit like I startled her. I just wanted to say up front, I know I'm not the smartest guy in this class, but I promise I'll do whatever grunt work you need. I won't make you carry me. She looked up at me through her eyelashes, her cheeks flushing a deep, bright pink. She clutched her massive binder to her chest like a physical shield. "Oh," she whispered. "Thank you. That's really sweet of you. I'm sure we'll be a great team." Her voice was so quiet I had to lean in just to hear her over the shuffling of backpacks. She smelled like lavender and baked sugar. My protective instincts instantly flared up. I felt like I was talking to a frightened baby bird that fell out of a tree. We started studying together 3 times a week. I fully expected her to suggest the campus library, or maybe a quiet coffee shop, but to my absolute shock, she insisted on coming to my place. She said the library made her too anxious. Too many people looking at her. She said she focused better in quieter, private spaces. This was a massive problem, because I lived in a chaotic off-campus rental house with 3 other guys. Steve and Bruce and a guy named Austin, who was never home. The house was exactly as disgusting as you would imagine. There were empty pizza boxes acting as structural supports for the coffee table. The day before our first study session, I panicked. I spent 4 frantic hours scrubbing my bedroom with industrial kitchen cleaners. I shoved all my dirty laundry into garbage bags and hid them in my closet. I sprayed an obscene amount of aerosol air freshener until my eyes watered. When she arrived that Tuesday afternoon, she looked completely bizarre, standing in our dingy carpeted hallway. She was holding a little pink Tupperware container with a white lid. "I baked snickerdoodles," she whispered, offering the container to me with both hands, for brain power. For the next 6 weeks, my clean bedroom became our sanctuary. She would sit cross-legged on my cheap area rug, her floral skirts tucked neatly around her knees, laying out charts and equations and hand-drawn graphs. I would sit on the edge of my mattress, trying desperately to keep up with her brain. The dynamic was completely intoxicating. She was a literal genius, but she never once made me feel stupid. Whenever I finally grasped a complex concept regarding entropy, she would clap her hands together softly and give me this beaming, proud smile that made my chest feel incredibly tight. I found myself thinking about her constantly. I started waking up early just to buy her favorite iced vanilla lattes before class. I started walking her all the way across campus to her car so she wouldn't be alone. I felt this primal, overwhelming urge to protect her from the entire world. She was just too pure for this garbage planet. The catalyst happened on a Thursday night. It was 2 a.m. We had been grinding for 9 straight hours, trying to finish the final 50-page thesis portion of our project. The rest of my house was dead silent. Bruce and Steve were passed out in their rooms. My brain felt like it had been put through a meat grinder. I was staring at the wall, completely zoned out. Finally, she hit the submit button on the university portal. We both let out a massive, synchronized sigh of relief. We did it, I breathed, sliding down the side of my bed to sit on the floor next to her. We did, she smiled, rubbing her eyes with the back of her hands. She looked exhausted. Her hair was slightly messy for the first time ever, a few strands falling out of her pearl clips. I don't think I can look at another equation for a month, she whispered. We need to celebrate, I said, without even thinking. I stood up and opened my sad little mini fridge. Tucked all the way in the back, behind some questionable yogurt, was a dusty bottle of cheap Moscato I had bought months ago and never opened. It's not champagne, but it's something I offered. Her eyes went wide. She pulled her cardigan tighter around her shoulders. Oh, she stammered. I don't know. I've never really drank alcohol before. My parents are really strict. Immediately, I felt like a massive piece of garbage. Oh God, no. I'm sorry I backpedaled hard. We don't have to at all. I can just make us some hot tea or something. No, she interrupted. Her voice was surprisingly firm for a fraction of a second, before instantly softening back into a whisper. No, it's okay. We finished the project. I want to try it. Just one glass. With you. I awkwardly poured the cheap wine into 2 red plastic cups. We clinked them together and drank. She scrunched up her nose at the taste, which I found incredibly endearing and cute. But within 15 minutes, the shift in her was dramatic. For a girl who had never drank, she apparently had zero tolerance. She started giggling at everything I said. Her rigid posture completely relaxed. She leaned heavily against my shoulder, her soft hair brushing against my neck. You're really warm, she mumbled. Her cheeks flushed bright red. You're getting tipsy, Marie, I laughed nervously. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I was hyper-aware of how close she was to me, of the lavender scent completely enveloping my personal space. She reached for her red cup to take another tiny sip, but her hand fumbled against the plastic. The cup tipped over, spilling a huge splash of the sticky sweet wine directly onto the front of her pastel blouse. She gasped loudly, her eyes welling up with tears instantly. Oh no, I ruined it, she cried. Hey, it's okay, it's totally fine. I panicked, jumping up from the floor. Go to the bathroom down the hall, second door on the left. Grab a wet towel. It'll come out, I promise. She nodded frantically and scurried out of my room. She was gone for a surprisingly long time, maybe 10 full minutes. Long enough for me to assume she was quietly having a panic attack over a stained shirt. I was just about to walk down the hall and knock on the door to check on her, when she walked back into my bedroom. My breath completely hitched in my throat. She wasn't wearing the blouse anymore. She was only wearing her thin, white lace-trimmed undershirt. Her skirt was still on, but the absolute vulnerability of her standing there in my messy room, shivering slightly under the ceiling fan, her arms crossed defensively over her chest. It completely short-circuited my brain. It wouldn't come out, she whispered. Her eyes fixed firmly on my carpet, and it was sticky. I didn't know what else to do. Here I rasped, my voice sounding weirdly deep and rough. I grabbed a clean, oversized gray hoodie from my closet. I stepped toward her. Put this on. As I draped the heavy hoodie over her bare shoulders, she looked up at me. We were inches apart. Her big brown eyes were glassy and dark. She didn't pull away. Instead, she reached up, her small hands gripping the front of my t-shirt. Marie, I warned, my voice physically shaking. You've been drinking. You don't know what you're doing right now. I do, she breathed, rising up onto her tiptoes. I want to, please. She kissed me. It was clumsy and hesitant, and completely overwhelming. The rest of the night was a total blur of fumbling hands and heavy breathing in the dark. She acted so incredibly fragile the entire time, constantly whispering things into the dark. Is this okay? I've never done this before. Am I doing it right? Which only amplified the dizzying rush of adrenaline and massive guilt in my veins. The next morning was excruciating. I woke up with the harsh morning sun streaming through my cheap plastic blinds. Marie was already fully dressed, sitting on the edge of the mattress with her back to me. She was hugging her knees tightly to her chest. She was physically trembling, Marie croaked, sitting up and rubbing my face. She flinched like I hit her. I have to go, she whispered, her voice tight, with what sounded like absolute panic. She didn't even look back at me. She just grabbed her heavy backpack and practically ran out of my bedroom. I heard the front door slam shut. For the next 2 months, I lived in a state of agonizing, punishing guilt. I felt like an absolute monster, a total predator. I had taken advantage of the sweetest, most innocent girl on the entire campus. We essentially started dating because I felt like I owed her my actual life, and she played the traumatized, fragile girlfriend flawlessly. I did everything for her. I mean, everything. I cooked her meals because she said the dining hall overwhelmed her. I cleaned her apartment. I pushed away Steve and Bruce and all my friends. Because she told me she was too shy to be around groups of loud guys. I gave her all my free time, entirely consumed by my own desperate need to make things right and protect her. Then, last Tuesday happened. We were hanging out at my place, sitting on my bed with our backs against the headboard. Her silver MacBook was resting on my knees while we looked for a movie to watch. "I'm going to grab us some water," she said, her voice soft and perfectly sweet. "Just pick whatever you want, honey." She patted my cheek gently and walked out of the room. Heading down the hall to the kitchen, I was scrolling through a sketchy streaming site when a notification banner slid across the top right corner of her screen. It was from Discord. "Valkyrie Queen, is he still completely whipped?" I froze, staring at the tiny text. Valkyrie Queen. I didn't know Marie played video games. I didn't even know she knew what Discord was. My sudden curiosity completely overrode my manners and my guilt. I swiped down on her trackpad, opening the application window full screen. What I saw completely paralyzed me. She wasn't just in some random gaming server. She was the sole admin of a private server called Project Enthalpy. There were 3 other users in the channel. I scrolled up. My hands physically started to shake. The chat logs went back 8 months. Long before we were ever randomly assigned as project partners in Thermo. There were pictures of me. Actual photographs. Pictures taken from the back rows of the lecture hall. Pictures of me walking across the quad to my crappy car. Pictures of me eating a terrible stale sandwich by myself in the student union. Marie, his schedule is so predictable. I've mapped his routes. He's perfect. Totally average, 0 self-esteem, desperate for validation. If I play the helpless angel routine, he'll imprint like a baby duck. I kept scrolling, my breath turning shallow and ragged. I saw screenshots of official university emails. She had somehow manipulated or socially engineered the professor's digital class roster to ensure we were permanently paired together for the thermodynamics project. Valkyrie Queen, how are the study sessions going? Marie, flawless. He cleans his disgusting room just for me. It's pathetic, but kind of cute. He thinks I'm some fragile virgin. The contrast is making him insane. I can see him holding back every time I lean on him. I felt a cold sweat break out on the back of my neck. Then I hit the messages from the night of the project submission, the night we drank the wine. Marie, making my move tonight? I made sure to look incredibly exhausted so he'd suggest celebrating. If he doesn't, I will prompt him. User 899, what about the alcohol? You said you hate wine. Marie, I'll pretend to be a massive lightweight. 1 cup, and I'll act clumsy. I'm going to spill it directly on my shirt so I have an excuse to take it off in his house. Guys are so incredibly easy to manipulate. My stomach violently heaved. I actually thought I was going to throw up all over her keyboard. I scrolled frantically to the very bottom, to the messages sent just 3 short weeks ago. Marie, it worked. He thinks he completely ruined my innocence. LMAO. He's been agonizing over it for months. He literally waits on me hand and foot now. Valkyrie Queen, are you sure he won't just get bored and dump you eventually? Marie, please. While he was getting me a hoodie that night, I plugged a tiny flash drive into his laptop. I planted the stolen answer keys for the engineering midterms deep in his hard drive. I saved all those fake crying voicemails I sent him the week after we slept together. If he ever tries to leave, the dean gets an anonymous tip about his cheating. And campus police gets a very detailed report about a very aggressive, obsessive stalker. But he won't leave. He's way too sweet. He's totally trapped. I couldn't breathe. The room was literally spinning around me, the sweet, innocent, fragile girl I had sworn to protect. She wasn't a baby bird. She was a terrifying, calculating, absolute predator. She hadn't stumbled clumsily into my bed. She had meticulously built a steel cage around my entire life. Hey, the voice wasn't a whisper. It wasn't breathy or soft or shy. It was dead flat, resonant, and entirely painfully confident. I whipped my head around so fast my neck popped. Marie was standing in the doorway holding 2 glass cups of ice water, but she looked completely different. Her shoulders weren't hunched inward anymore. She wasn't nervously clutching her cardigan. She stood perfectly straight, her chin tilted up slightly. The doe-eyed, trembling innocence was completely gone from her face, replaced by a cold, sharp, appraising stare. She looked at my terrified face. Then she looked down at the bright laptop screen resting on my legs, glowing with her own Discord logs. For a terrifying 5 seconds, there was absolute dead silence in the room. The only sound was the ceiling fan clicking. I waited for her to burst into tears, to fall to her knees and beg, to make up some elaborate crazy excuse. Instead, a slow, sharp smile spread across her face. It didn't reach her eyes at all. She casually walked into the room, set the 2 glasses of water down on my messy nightstand, and casually reached over, snapping her MacBook shut right on my lap. The plastic click echoed in the quiet room like a gunshot. "Well," she said, her voice dripping with a casual, terrifying ease, "I suppose that saves me the trouble of keeping up the baby voice. It was really starting to hurt my throat anyway." I stammered, backing up against the headboard until my shoulders hit the wall, feeling genuinely sick and terrified. "You planned all of this. You planted fake evidence on my computer. You framed me." "I just made sure you'd be mine," she corrected smoothly. Sitting down on the edge of the mattress, she crossed one leg over the other, resting her hands calmly on her knee. "You're a good guy, Henry. You're loyal, you're sweet, and most importantly, you're safe. You don't have crazy, wild ambitions that will take you away from home. You're gonna get a stable, boring engineering job, make a decent, predictable salary, and you're going to treat me like a princess for the rest of our lives." "You're insane," I choked out, my chest heaving. "I'm leaving. I'm calling the cops. I'm telling the department head. I don't even know what I'm doing, but I'm getting away from you." Marie tilted her head slightly, her dark eyes locking onto mine with absolute chilling calm. "You're not going anywhere, sweetheart," she said softly, reaching out and gently tracing the line of my jaw with one perfectly manicured fingernail. I physically shuddered, but I couldn't force myself to move away. "I'm the department valedictorian. Everyone on campus loves me. The professors adore me. You try to run, and I hit send to the dean of students. You get expelled for academic fraud by tomorrow afternoon, and everyone on campus will think you're a creep who harassed the shy girl until I snapped. You won't be able to get a job sweeping a gas station, let alone an engineering firm." Her smile softened into something genuinely affectionate, which was somehow even scarier than the cold stare. "But if you stay, I'll be the perfect girlfriend. I will take care of you, Henry. We're going to have a beautiful, quiet life, and you never have to worry about making a difficult decision ever again, because I'll be making all of them for you." She patted my cheek twice, stood up from the bed, and smoothed down the front of her floral skirt. "I'm moving the rest of my things in this weekend," she stated, walking confidently toward the bedroom door. "Oh, and tell your roommates they have until the end of the month to find a new place. I don't want to live in this filth anymore." She shut the door gently behind her. That was 3 days ago. I spent the first 24 hours throwing up and pacing my room. I tried to find the flash drive on my laptop. I searched every hidden folder. It's there, nested deep in some weird partition I don't even know how to access. The stolen midterms are sitting on my hard drive like a ticking bomb. The next morning, Marie showed up at 8 a.m. sharp. She didn't knock. She had already taken Austin's spare key from the bowl by the door. She walked right into the kitchen, wearing a crisp white blouse and jeans. She wasn't wearing pastels anymore. She looked like a terrifyingly put-together adult. Steve was standing by the sink in his boxers, eating cold toast. Bruce was asleep on the couch. "Morning, boys," Marie said loudly, clapping her hands once. Steve jumped, dropping his toast in the sink. Marie walked over to the kitchen table and set down a manila folder. "So," she said, smiling brightly, "I'm moving in with Henry. And unfortunately, this space is a little tight for 3 people. So I've taken the liberty of speaking with your landlord." Steve stared at her. "What are you talking about?" he mumbled, rubbing his eyes. Marie pulled a piece of paper from the folder. "Your lease has a sublet buyout clause," she explained. her voice cheerful but totally unyielding. "I paid the penalty fee this morning out of my savings. Your names are officially off the lease as of the 31st. You have 12 days to pack your things." Bruce sat up on the couch, looking incredibly confused. "Wait, you can't just kick us out," Bruce protested. Marie turned her terrifying smile on Bruce. "Bruce," she said softly, "I noticed you've been using a space heater in your room, which is a severe fire hazard and a direct violation of Section 4 of the lease agreement. I also noticed Steve has 3 unpaid parking tickets linked to this address. I would hate for the property manager to withhold your security deposits over such silly little oversights." She reached into her tote bag and pulled out a fresh batch of chocolate chip cookies wrapped in tinfoil. "I baked these for you guys while you pack," she said, setting them on the counter. Steve and Bruce looked at the cookies. Then they looked at Marie. Then they looked at me, standing terrified in the hallway. They didn't even fight it. Steve grabbed a cookie and walked back to his room. They started packing that afternoon. I realized then that I was entirely screwed. She wasn't just manipulating me. She was capable of moving people around, like furniture. By the end of the week, the house was empty, and Marie's stuff started arriving. She didn't bring normal college stuff. She brought actual furniture. She brought framed art. She brought matching plates that weren't made of plastic. She threw away my posters while I was in class. When I came home and tried to complain, she just looked at me. "Henry, we are adults now," she said, unpacking a massive box of Tupperware. "You are not putting a wrinkled poster of a sports car on the wall of our living room. Go wash your hands. I'm making roast chicken." I went to the bathroom and washed my hands. I ate the roast chicken. It was the best meal I had eaten in 3 years. I hated how much I liked it. A few days later, she decided the current rental house was too drafty. "We need a better place," she announced over breakfast. Pouring me a cup of hot coffee, she woke up early to brew. I already scheduled a tour at the new apartment complex near the Botanical Gardens. "We're going at noon." "But I have a lab at 1, I protested weakly. She just slid a plate of eggs toward me. "Eat your eggs, honey," she said. "I already emailed your TA. You have an excused absence for a family emergency." I stared at her completely horrified. "How did you email my TA?" "I logged into your Canvas account while you were in the shower," she said casually. "Your password was literally password 123 Henry. It was genuinely embarrassing. I changed it to something more secure. I'll write it down for you later." We went to the leasing office at noon. The place was incredibly nice, way out of my price range. We sat down in the office with a leasing agent named Ernest. Ernest was wearing a shiny suit and chewing gum. He looked at us like we were broke college kids wasting his time. "So rent is $1,500 a month," Ernest said, leaning back in his chair. "Plus a mandatory $200 monthly amenity fee for the gym and pool." Marie crossed her legs. She opened her neat little leather portfolio. "Actually, Ernest," she said, her voice dropping into that cold, flat tone I was terrified of. "Under state housing law, a mandatory amenity fee must be explicitly advertised in the initial listing, which your online listing failed to do." She slid a printed screenshot of their website across the desk. Ernest stopped chewing his gum. "Well, it's in the fine print," he deflected. Marie smiled, the smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It really isn't, Ernest," she said, "and I'm sure the State Housing Authority would be very interested to see how many current tenants are paying an unadvertised mandatory fee. It sounds like a massive class action headache for your management company." Ernest stared at her, the color draining from his face. "Or," she continued lightly, "you could waive the amenity fee for our unit entirely, and we can sign the lease right now and save everyone a lot of messy paperwork." Ernest swallowed hard. He typed furiously on his computer for a minute. "I can waive the fee," he mumbled. Marie turned to me, beaming a genuine bright smile. "Isn't that great, honey?" she chirped. I just nodded silently. She was a monster. But she was a monster who was saving me $200 a month. We moved into the new place 2 weeks later. She bought matching towels. She bought a shower curtain that didn't have mildew on it. She organized my closet by color and season. I felt like a hostage in a 5-star hotel. Things escalated when my sister Viola came to visit. Viola is 26 and a complete nightmare. She is constantly moving between jobs and boyfriends. She showed up at our new apartment unannounced on a Saturday morning, wearing a massive oversized sweater and carrying a huge iced coffee. "Henry, I need you to hold space for me right now," Viola announced, pushing past me into the living room. "Mom is being completely toxic about my life choices, and I'm setting a firm boundary with her, which means I'm crashing on your couch for 2 weeks to protect my peace." Viola stopped dead in her tracks. She looked around the incredibly clean living room. She looked at the throw pillows. She looked at the fresh flowers on the kitchen island. Then she looked at Marie. Marie was standing in the kitchen, wearing an apron over her jeans, chopping vegetables with terrifying precision. "Who are you?" Viola asked, narrowing her eyes. Marie put the knife down. She wiped her hands on a towel and walked over. "I'm Marie," she smiled, putting out her hand. "Henry's girlfriend. We live here together." Viola didn't take her hand. Viola looked Marie up and down. "Wow," Viola scoffed. "You guys moved in together already? You seem very codependent. It's extremely unhealthy to enmesh your lives this fast." I braced myself for the explosion. I fully expected Marie to destroy my sister, to hack Viola's bank account or ruin her credit score. But Marie didn't blink. She just kept smiling warmly. "Viola, that must be so exhausting for you," Marie said softly. Viola blinked. "What?" Carrying all that defensiveness, Marie continued, her voice dripping with fake empathy. "It sounds like you're projecting your own inability to maintain a stable environment onto Henry, because it's easier to criticize his healthy relationship than confront your own toxic patterns." Viola's jaw dropped. "Excuse me," Viola sputtered. Marie stepped slightly closer to my sister. "You're running away from your mother because you refuse to take accountability for your own choices," Marie said, her voice never raising above a gentle conversational hum. "And now you're trying to violate Henry's boundaries by inviting yourself into our home without asking. We are happy to hold space for you for exactly one dinner, Viola. But you will not be staying on our couch, because you need to sit with your own discomfort and grow." Viola just stood there completely frozen. Marie had used Viola's own obnoxious vocabulary to completely dismantle her. Viola's bottom lip started to quiver. Suddenly, Viola burst into loud, ugly tears. "You're right," Viola sobbed, dropping her iced coffee on the counter. "I'm a mess. I'm so entirely broken." Marie stepped forward and wrapped her arms around my weeping sister. There, Marie cooed, softly patting Viola's back. "It's okay to do the work, Viola. I'm making a casserole. Why don't you stay and eat? And we can talk about getting you a therapist." Viola hugged Marie back tightly. "You're the sister I never had," Viola cried into Marie's shoulder. I stood in the corner of the room feeling completely, totally insane. Marie looked over Viola's shoulder at me. She gave me a quick, sharp wink. I realized in that moment that Marie wasn't just controlling me. She was managing my entire universe, and she was doing it better than I ever could. The next week, she targeted my car. I drive a beat-up sedan that constantly makes a weird rattling noise. I had been ignoring the noise for 6 months because I didn't have the money to fix it. We were driving to the grocery store when it rattled really loudly. "Pull over," Marie commanded from the passenger seat. "What?" "Why?" I asked. "I'm driving." "Because that's a worn-out serpentine belt, Henry," she said, rolling her eyes. "And I am not dying on the side of the highway because you're too stubborn to go to a mechanic. Pull into that garage up ahead." I pulled into a greasy, local repair shop. The mechanic was a huge guy with grease all over his overalls. He took one look at us, a nervous college kid and a pretty girl in a nice jacket, and his eyes lit up with dollar signs. "Yeah," he grunted, wiping his hands on a rag. "Sounds like the whole transmission is slipping. Gonna be at least $1,200 to even open it up and look." I sighed deeply, ready to just accept my fate and drain my meager checking account. Marie stepped in front of me. She crossed her arms. "No, it isn't," she said flatly. The mechanic looked down at her and laughed. "Listen, sweetheart," he said condescendingly. "I know what I'm talking about." Marie didn't even flinch. "It's a 2014 base model," she snapped. "The rattle is coming from the front right quadrant under the hood, not the center block. It's the serpentine belt, slapping against the tensioner pulley because the bearing is shot. The part costs $30 at the auto supply store down the street, and it takes exactly 20 minutes to swap it out with a standard socket wrench. You are going to replace the belt and the tensioner, and you are going to charge us $80 for labor, or I'm going to get on Yelp and Google reviews right now and post a very detailed warning about how you try to scam young women by diagnosing fake transmission failures." The mechanic stared at her, his mouth slightly open. He looked at the car. He looked at Marie's completely unblinking death stare. He threw his rag on the ground. "Fine," he grumbled. "Pull it into Bay 3. I just stood there holding my car keys, feeling entirely useless and totally awestruck. We waited in the plastic chairs in the lobby. "How do you know about cars?" I whispered to her. She flipped through a stale magazine. "I don't," she replied quietly, "but I researched common failures for your exact make and model last week. Because I knew you'd eventually need it fixed, and I knew you'd get ripped off. I'm taking care of you, Henry. She patted my knee and went back to reading an article about kitchen remodels. After the car was fixed, she decided my registration was probably out of date. She checked the glove box. It was expired by 4 months. Henry, she sighed loudly, rubbing her temples. How are you still alive? How did you survive before I met you? I don't know. I admitted honestly. We drove straight to the DMV. The place was packed. A massive, depressing room full of angry, tired people holding numbered paper tickets. We pulled a number and sat in the hard plastic chairs. We waited for 2 straight hours. I was getting restless. Marie sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap. Finally, our number was called. We walked up to the counter. The clerk was an older woman who looked incredibly miserable. I handed her my messy stack of paperwork. She sighed heavily and started stamping things. Suddenly, a guy in a dirty tank top barged past us. He slammed his hands on the counter right next to Marie. Hey, he yelled at the clerk. I've been waiting for 3 hours. He skipped my number. Sir, the clerk said tiredly, you have to wait your turn. I'm not waiting anymore, the guy barked. He took a step closer, physically crowding into Marie's personal space. He bumped her shoulder hard. Hey, buddy, I started to say, stepping forward. Marie put a hand on my chest, stopping me. She turned slowly to look at the guy in the tank top. Excuse me, she said, her voice dangerously quiet. What do you want? The guy sneered, looking her up and down. Marie stepped entirely into his personal space. She looked up at him with those big, dark eyes. You are going to step back, she whispered. You are going to go sit down in that plastic chair. And you are going to wait patiently like an adult, the guy scoffed. Or what, little girl? Marie smiled. It was the scariest thing I've ever seen. Or I'm going to start screaming, she said pleasantly. I'm going to throw myself on this dirty linoleum floor. And I'm going to scream that you touched me. There are 4 security cameras pointing directly at us right now, and roughly 50 witnesses who are already incredibly annoyed by you. Who do you think the security guards are going to believe? The angry guy sweating in a tank top? Or the terrified college student crying on the floor? The guy stared at her, the aggression completely melting off his face into pure confusion and fear. He swallowed hard. He took a slow step backward. Crazy chick, he muttered, turning around and walking quickly back to his seat. Marie turned back to the counter like nothing had happened. The clerk was staring at her with wide eyes. Marie slid my forms closer to the glass. Can we update the mailing address to our new apartment, please? She asked sweetly. The clerk stamped the papers so fast she almost broke her wrist. We walked out of the DMV with my new registration. We walked across the hot asphalt parking lot to my newly fixed car. I unlocked the doors. We got in. I didn't start the engine. I just sat there gripping the steering wheel, staring out the dusty windshield. What's wrong? She asked, buckling her seatbelt. You're a psychopath, I said quietly. Not angry, just stating a fact. Marie sighed. She reached over and put her soft hand over mine on the steering wheel. Henry, she said softly. I know I came on a little strong. A little strong, I echoed, my voice cracking. You framed me for academic fraud to trap me in a relationship. Okay, she conceded, waving her free hand dismissively. The methods were extreme, I admit that. But look at your life right now. Look at it. She turned my face toward her. You have a beautiful, clean apartment. You were eating 3 actual meals a day instead of stale pizza. Your car doesn't sound like it's going to explode on the highway. Your GPA is up to a 3.8 because I literally force you to study, and your horrible sister finally respects your boundaries. I stared at her. She was entirely right. My life was objectively 1,000 times better. I was healthier. I was sleeping 8 hours a night. I had nice towels. I just had to live with the constant underlying fear that my girlfriend was a mafia boss trapped in the body of a sorority girl. I love you, Henry, she whispered, her eyes softening into something that looked genuinely real and incredibly vulnerable. I just wanted to be with you. And I knew if I asked normally, you'd think I was out of your league and run away. I didn't want to risk losing you to chance, so I removed chance from the equation. She leaned over the center console and kissed me. It wasn't the clumsy, fumbling kiss from the first night. It was firm and sure and completely claiming me. I kissed her back, because honestly, what else was I supposed to do? I started the car and we drove home. That was 4 months ago. We are fully settled into the apartment now. The domestic routine is entirely established and completely inescapable. I woke up this morning at 6:30 a.m. Because Marie decided we are morning people now. I walked into the bathroom. The sink is perfectly clean. There is a brand new tube of expensive toothpaste sitting exactly parallel to my toothbrush. My towels are folded into perfect thirds on the rack. I walk into the kitchen. The smell of fresh coffee and bacon fills the room. Maria standing by the stove wearing one of my oversized hoodies. The exact same gray hoodie from that first night, the sleeves pushed up past her elbows. She is humming quietly while she flips pancakes. On the kitchen island, there is a neat stack of paperwork. It's the lease renewal form for next year. She has already signed my name on it in perfectly forged handwriting. She looks over her shoulder and sees me standing there. "Morning, honey," she smiles brightly. "Eat your breakfast quickly. We have to go to the bank at 9 to merge our checking accounts. And then I'm taking you to buy proper winter boots, because yours have holes in them." I walk over and sit down at the island. I look at the forged signature on the lease. I look at the hot pancakes placed carefully on a ceramic plate in front of me. I pick up my fork. "Okay," I say. The sound of her keys clinking softly against the granite counter is the loudest thing in the room. I'm completely trapped. But the coffee is incredibly good, and I don't think I want to go anywhere else anyway.